The auctioneer's gavel struck 3 times against the wooden podium, each crack echoing through Clara Morrison's chest like the breaking of her own bones, and she stood on that platform in the dusty town square of Redemption, Texas, in the summer of 1878, knowing that her name, her freedom, and every piece of dignity she possessed were about to be stripped away because her father had failed to pay back what he owed. The crowd gathered below her consisted mostly of men, their faces weathered by sun and hard living, their eyes calculating as they assessed her worth like she was a mare at a livestock auction. Clara kept her chin high despite the humiliation burning through her veins. She wore the only decent dress she owned, a faded blue cotton thing that had belonged to her mother before consumption had taken her 5 years back. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders because the banker's men had taken even the ribbon she used to tie it back, claiming everything she owned now belonged to the bank until the debt was satisfied. Gentlemen, we have here Miss Clara Morrison, age 22, healthy, capable of cooking, cleaning, and general household duties, the auctioneer announced, his voice carrying across the square. Her father, Daniel Morrison, owed the Redemption Bank the sum of $800, a debt accumulated over 3 years of failed crops and poor decisions. The court has ruled that Miss Morrison may be indentured to satisfy this obligation. We will start the bidding at $500. Clara's stomach twisted. $500 meant she would be working off not just her father's debt, but interest and fees for years, perhaps the rest of her young life. She scanned the crowd, recognizing faces from town. There was Mr. Hendricks, who owned the general store and had a wife and 6 children, but whose eyes lingered too long on Clara whenever she came in. There was Samuel Pritchard, the saloon owner, whose establishment was known for the women who worked upstairs and whose smile made Clara's skin crawl. And there were ranch hands, drifters, men whose names she did not know but whose intentions she could read clearly enough. $500, called out a voice, and Clara's heart sank as she saw it was Pritchard, stepping forward with a confident swagger. 600, countered Hendricks, and Clara felt bile rise in her throat. The bidding continued, climbing higher, and Clara felt herself disappearing with each new number called out. She was no longer a person, no longer the girl who had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, who loved reading by candlelight, who could make her father laugh even in the darkest times before he had taken to drinking away his sorrows. She was becoming a commodity, a piece of property to be bought and sold. $900, Pritchard announced triumphantly, and the crowd fell silent. It was an astronomical sum, more than the debt itself, which meant Pritchard was buying her not as an indentured servant, but as something else entirely. Clara's hands began to shake. The auctioneer raised his gavel. $900 to Mr. Pritchard. Going once? Going twice? $1,000. The voice cut through the heavy air like a knife, deep and steady and coming from the back of the crowd. Every head turned, including Clara's. A tall man pushed through the gathering, his boots kicking up dust with each purposeful stride. He wore dark trousers and a simple cotton shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows revealing sun-bronzed forearms. A black hat shadowed his face. But as he drew closer, Clara could make out strong features, a firm jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble, and eyes the color of winter sky, pale blue and startlingly clear. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30, with the build of someone who spent his life working hard under an unforgiving sun. $1,000, he repeated, stopping at the base of the platform. He did not look at the other bidders, did not acknowledge their angry muttering. His gaze fixed on Clara's face, and something in his expression made her breath catch. It was not the hungry look of the other men, not the calculating assessment of someone purchasing property. There was something else there, something she could not quite name. "And who might you be, sir?" the auctioneer asked, clearly pleased by this turn of events. "Cole Brennan," the man said simply. "I have a ranch 15 miles north of here. I can pay in cash right now." "Mr. Brennan, I must remind you that you will be taking on responsibility for Miss Morrison until the debt is satisfied through her labor. The terms I understand the terms, Cole interrupted. Do you want the money or not? The auctioneer's smile widened. Sold to Mr. Cole Brennan for $1,000. Miss Morrison, you are now indentured to Mr. Brennan until such time as your labor has repaid the debt your father incurred, plus the amount Mr. Brennan has paid on your behalf. Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Cole Brennan climbed the steps to the platform, moving with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own body. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes from squinting against the sun, the small scar along his left cheekbone, the way his calloused hands handled the money he counted out for the banker with surprising gentleness. Can you ride? He asked her quietly as the transaction was completed, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Yes, Clara managed, her own voice sounding strange to her ears. Good. My horse is at the hitching post. The bay mare. Wait for me there. It was not a suggestion but a command, yet something in his tone lacked the harshness she had expected. Clara descended the platform on unsteady legs, aware of the eyes following her, of Pritchard's angry glare and Hendrick's disappointed frown. She made her way through the crowd, feeling their judgment, their curiosity, their schadenfreude at seeing the Morrison girl brought so low. The bay mare was easy to spot, a beautiful animal with intelligent eyes and a glossy coat. Clara stood beside her, one hand resting against the horse's warm neck, drawing comfort from the solid presence. She watched as Cole finished his business with the banker and the auctioneer, saw him shake hands with the banker in a way that seemed more threat than courtesy, and then he was striding toward her with a purpose that made her heart race. What is your name? He asked as he untied the mare's reins. Clara, she said confused. Clara Morrison. The auctioneer said, I know what the auctioneer said. I am asking what you want to be called. The question was so unexpected that Clara found herself answering honestly. My mother used to call me Claire. Just Claire. Cole nodded once, as if this information was important, worth remembering. All right, Claire, we have a ride ahead of us. Are you hungry? She was starving, actually. The banker's men had come for her at dawn before she had eaten anything, and it was now past midday. But admitting weakness to this stranger who now owned her labor, her time, perhaps her very life, seemed dangerous. I can manage, she said. Those pale blue eyes studied her for a moment, and Clara had the uncomfortable sensation that he could see right through her brave words to the fear and exhaustion beneath. Without a word, he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a cloth-wrapped package, which he handed to her. Eat, he said simply. It is a long ride to the ranch, and I need you conscious when we get there. Clara unwrapped the cloth to find fresh bread and cheese, simple fare but of good quality. Her stomach growled audibly, and she saw the corner of Cole's mouth twitch in what might have been amusement. Pride warred with hunger, and hunger won. She ate while he checked the saddle and tack, making sure everything was secure. Can you ride alone, or do you need to ride with me? He asked when she had finished eating. The thought of being pressed against him for 15 miles made Clara's cheeks heat. I can ride alone if you have a horse for me. I have a horse, but she's back at the ranch. You will ride with me today, and tomorrow I will teach you to handle Dancer. That is the mare I have in mind for you. Before Clara could protest, Cole swung himself up into the saddle with easy grace and extended his hand down to her. She hesitated only a moment before taking it, gasping, as he pulled her up behind him with strength that seemed effortless. She had no choice but to wrap her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt, the way his muscles moved as he gathered the reins and urged the mare into a trot. They left Redemption behind, the town that had watched her humiliation without protest, that had allowed her to be sold like property because of her father's debts. Clara had lived there her whole life, had known most of those people since childhood, and not one had spoken up in her defense. The betrayal cut deep, but she forced herself not to look back, to focus instead on the landscape opening up before them. The Texas summer stretched in all directions, golden grass rippling under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The heat pressed down like a physical weight, but the movement of the horse created a breeze that made it bearable. Cole did not try to make conversation, seemed content with silence, and Clara was grateful. She needed time to think, to process what had happened, to figure out what came next. But as the miles passed and the sun climbed higher, exhaustion from the emotional turmoil of the day began to catch up with her. Her grip on Cole's waist loosened. Her head drooped forward until it rested against his broad back. And despite every intention to remain alert and wary, she found herself drifting into an uneasy sleep. She woke when the horse stopped moving. Disoriented, Clara lifted her head and realized she was slumped fully against Cole, her arms still loosely around him. She jerked back, mortified, but his hand caught hers gently. "Easy," he said. "We are here." Clara looked around and saw they had arrived at a ranch that was modest but well-maintained. A 2-story house with a wide porch dominated the property, its white paint clean and bright in the afternoon sun. A barn stood nearby, red and sturdy, with a corral attached where several horses grazed peacefully. There were other outbuildings, what looked like a bunkhouse, a chicken coop, a smokehouse. Everything spoke of someone who took pride in their property, who worked hard to maintain what they had built. Cole dismounted and reached up to help Clara down. Her legs were stiff from the ride, unsteady beneath her, and she stumbled. His hand steadied her, strong and warm on her waist, and for a moment they stood close enough that Clara could see the golden flecks in his blue eyes, could smell the scent of leather and sage that clung to him. "Thank you," she said quietly, stepping back as soon as she could stand on her own. "Come inside," Cole said, leading her toward the house. "You will need to know the layout, understand how things work here." The interior of the house was surprisingly spacious and clean. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall, a sturdy wooden table with 6 chairs and cabinets that looked handmade but expertly crafted. Sunlight streamed through windows that were actually clean, with curtains that, while simple, were mended and pressed. "Upstairs are 3 bedrooms, Cole explained, his voice taking on a businesslike tone. "The largest is mine. The second is the guest room where you will sleep. The third is storage, but we can clear it out if needed later. There is a pump outside for water, and I have been working on getting proper plumbing, but that is still a few months away." Clara nodded, taking it all in, trying to reconcile this comfortable, well-kept home with what she had expected. She had imagined something rougher, more bachelor-like, perhaps dirty and neglected. "I run cattle," Cole continued. "About 200 head right now, though I'm hoping to expand. I have 2 ranch hands who work for me, brothers named Miguel and Carlos Rodriguez. They live in the bunkhouse and take their meals there, but I will introduce you tomorrow. They are good men, trustworthy. They will not bother you." "And what exactly do you expect from me?" Clara asked, hating how small her voice sounded but needing to know. The fear she had been suppressing all day rose up again, making her throat tight. She had heard stories about what happened to indentured women, about men who used the law as an excuse for ownership in every sense of the word. Cole turned to face her fully, and his expression was serious, almost grave. "I expect you to help maintain the house, prepare meals, tend the garden if you know how, handle the chickens and gather eggs, standard household work. I expect honesty and a fair day's labor. That is all." "That is all?" Clara repeated, not quite believing him. Something shifted in Cole's face, a flash of what might have been anger or perhaps pain. "I did not buy you for anything else, if that is what you're asking. You will have your own room with a lock on the door. You have my word that I will not touch you in any way you do not welcome." The specificity of that last phrase caught Clara's attention. Not that he would not touch her at all, but that he would not touch her in any way she did not welcome. It was a subtle distinction, but an important one. "Why did you do this?" she asked suddenly. "Why did you pay so much for me? You could have hired help for far less." Cole was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the window that looked out over his land. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough with emotion. 5 years ago, I watched my sister be sold in a similar auction in a town in Kansas. Our parents died of fever, left us with debts we could not pay. I was 18, working as a ranch hand, had nothing. I tried to bid on her, but I had no money. A man named Garrett purchased her. He paused, his jaw clenching. She died 2 years later. The official report said pneumonia, but I know better. He worked her to death, treated her worse than an animal. Clara felt her eyes sting with sudden tears. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I swore that if I ever had the means, if I ever saw another woman being sold like cattle, I would buy her freedom if I could. I have been building this ranch saving every dollar, and when I heard about the auction in redemption, I knew I had to go." He turned back to her, and his eyes were fierce. "You are not my property, Claire. You are a person who deserves dignity and respect. Yes, there is a debt to be worked off, but you will be paid fair wages for your labor, and those wages will go toward the debt. At a fair rate, you will be free and clear in less than 2 years." The tears Clara had been holding back spilled over. For the first time since her father had confessed his failures, since the bank had come to take everything, since she had stood on that platform and felt the weight of those stares, she felt something like hope. "I do not understand," she said, wiping at her cheeks. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Cole said simply. "I know you held your head high when others would have crumbled. I know you did not beg or plead, did not try to manipulate the crowd's emotions. You faced your circumstances with courage. That tells me what I need to know about your character." Clara took a shaky breath, trying to regain her composure. "Thank you," she said, the words inadequate for what she was feeling, but all she had to offer. "Thank you for giving me a chance to earn my freedom, for treating me like a human being. I will work hard for you, I promise. I will prove that your faith in me was not misplaced." "I have no doubt," Cole said, and he smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face into something warmer, more approachable. "Now let me show you your room, and then we should think about dinner. I have been living on my own cooking for too long, and I suspect you can do better." He led her upstairs, showing her a room that was simply furnished but comfortable, with a real bed covered in clean quilts, a dresser, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and even a small mirror on the wall. The window looked out over the pastures, and Clara could see the horses grazing in the golden light of late afternoon. "There are some clothes in the dresser," Cole said, lingering in the doorway. "They belong to my mother. She passed 3 years back, but I kept her things. You're about the same size. Use what you need." This casual generosity, this thoughtfulness, was so unexpected that Clara found herself speechless. Cole seemed to take her silence for agreement and nodded. "Take some time to settle in," he said. "Come down when you're ready, and we will figure out dinner together." He left, closing the door behind him, and Clara heard his boots on the stairs, heard the sound of him moving around in the kitchen below. She sat on the edge of the bed, testing its softness, still half convinced this was some kind of dream or trick. But the bed was real. The room was real. And when she opened the dresser, she found neatly folded dresses, skirts, blouses, all in serviceable fabrics and practical styles. Clara chose a simple gray skirt and white blouse, changed out of her worn dress, and splashed water from the pitcher onto her face. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The fear was still there in her eyes, the exhaustion, but there was something else now too, something that looked almost like possibility. When she went back downstairs, she found Cole at the stove, clearly attempting to make something but looking somewhat lost. He glanced up when she entered, and his eyes took in the change of clothes with a nod of approval. "Those suit you," he said. "Much more practical for ranch work." "Let me help," Clara said, moving toward the stove. "What were you trying to make?" "I have salt pork, beans, some vegetables from the garden, flour for biscuits if you know how to make them," Cole said, stepping aside willingly. "I am a capable ranch hand and a decent businessman, but I've never mastered the art of making food taste like anything other than fuel." Clara could not help but smile at that. I can work with what you have. My mother taught me to cook before she died, and I have been managing my father's household for 5 years. She set to work with a competence born of long practice, and Cole watched for a moment before moving to set the table, to fetch water from the pump outside, to do the small tasks that supported her efforts without getting in the way. They worked in companionable silence, and Clara found herself relaxing incrementally, her guard lowering just slightly. The meal came together well, better than Clara had hoped given the simple ingredients. The biscuits were golden and fluffy, the beans seasoned properly, the salt pork fried until crispy. She dished up 2 plates and brought them to the table where Cole was already seated. "This smells incredible," he said, and there was genuine appreciation in his voice. They ate together as the sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Cole asked her questions about her life, about what she enjoyed doing, about her dreams before everything had fallen apart. He listened when she talked about wanting to be a teacher, about her love of books, about how she used to help at the schoolhouse before her father's drinking made their social standing too precarious. In turn, Clara learned about Cole's life. He had worked on ranches since he was 14, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and land management. After his sister died, he had thrown himself into work with single-minded determination, saving every penny until he had enough to purchase this property 3 years ago. He had built it up from nothing, working dawn to dusk, investing in good breeding stock, earning a reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle. "It is not a large operation," Cole said, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup, "but it is mine. Everything here I built with my own hands and my own sweat. That means something." "It means everything," Clara said softly, understanding in a way she might not have before today. Ownership, independence, the ability to make one's own choices. She had taken those things for granted until they were stripped away. As the evening wore on and exhaustion finally caught up with her completely, Clara excused herself to bed. She climbed the stairs to her room, locked the door, as Cole had indicated she could, and collapsed onto the bed. She expected to lie awake, her mind racing with everything that had happened, but instead she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep that lasted until the rooster crowed at dawn. The next weeks established a routine that Clara found surprisingly comfortable. She woke early, prepared breakfast for Cole and herself, packed a lunch for him to take out to the range, and then set about the household tasks. The work was hard, but no harder than what she had been doing for her father, and here it felt purposeful, appreciated. Cole never failed to thank her for meals, to notice when she had mended his shirts or cleaned a room thoroughly. His respect for her labor made the work feel dignified rather than demeaning. Cole kept his promise about teaching her to ride Dancer, a spirited chestnut mare with a white blaze down her face. Clara had ridden before, but always sedately, on old farm horses used to plodding. Dancer was different, responsive and quick, and learning to handle her gave Clara a sense of freedom she had not experienced in years. Cole was a patient teacher, never mocking when she made mistakes, always ready with encouragement and practical advice. She met Miguel and Carlos, the Rodriguez brothers, who were indeed as trustworthy as Cole had promised. They were polite and respectful, tipping their hats when they saw her, complimenting her cooking on the occasions when she sent food out to them. She learned that they had worked for Cole for 2 years, that they were saving money to buy their own land someday, and that they were fiercely loyal to Cole because he treated them fairly and paid them well. As summer deepened into the intense heat of August, Clara found herself settling into life on the ranch in ways she had not anticipated. The work was honest and fulfilling, the surroundings beautiful, and Cole was proving to be far more than just a fair employer. He was kind without being condescending, strong without being domineering, and possessed a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. They fell into the habit of sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. Cole told her stories about his childhood, about the sister he still mourned, about his dreams for the ranch. Clara shared her own stories, her own losses, and found that speaking about her mother's death and her father's decline to someone who listened without judgment brought a kind of healing she had not expected. It was during one of these evening conversations that Clara first realized her feelings for Cole were shifting into something more than gratitude or respect. He was talking about a particularly stubborn calf he had dealt with that day. His voice animated, his eyes bright with amusement, and Clara found herself watching the way the fading light caught in his hair, the way his hands moved as he gestured, the warmth of his smile. Her heart did something complicated in her chest, a flutter and ache combined, and she understood with sudden clarity that she was beginning to fall in love with this man. The realization terrified her. She was indentured to him, dependent on his goodwill, in no position to have feelings that could complicate their arrangement. What if he did not feel the same? What if her feelings made him uncomfortable and he sent her away? What if he did feel the same but felt it was improper to act on those feelings given their circumstances? Clara tried to suppress what she was feeling, to push it down and ignore it, but emotions did not work that way. Every kind word from Cole, every smile, every moment of shared laughter or comfortable silence made her feelings grow stronger. She caught herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, noticing small details like the way he always checked to make sure she had eaten enough, the way he left wildflowers on the kitchen table that he had picked on his rides, the way his face softened when he looked at her. The possibility that he might feel something too began to occur to her. There were moments when their hands would brush accidentally and he would hold the contact just a heartbeat longer than necessary. Times when she would catch him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. The way he always asked about her day, her thoughts, her feelings, as if they truly mattered to him. One evening in late September, as the heat finally began to break and the air took on the first hints of autumn's coolness, Clara was washing dishes from dinner when Cole came up beside her to dry them. This had become part of their routine, this shared domestic task, and Clara cherished it for the easy companionship it represented. "Claire," Cole said, his voice unusually tentative, "I need to talk to you about something." Clara's heart began to race. His tone suggested this was serious, important, and a dozen possibilities flashed through her mind, none of them good. Had she done something wrong? Was he sending her away? "All right," she said, keeping her eyes on the plate she was washing, afraid of what she might reveal if she looked at him. "You have been here for 3 months now," Cole continued, setting down the dish he was drying. "In that time, you have more than proven your worth, your capability, your character. I want you to know that the debt you are working off is being satisfied faster than I initially calculated. Your labor has been so valuable that at this rate you will be free in less than a year, not the 2 years I originally estimated." This should have been good news, wonderful news, but instead Clara felt her stomach drop. Less than a year, and then she would have to leave. Find her own way in the world, leave behind this place and these people and Cole himself. The thought was unbearable. "That is good to know," she managed, her voice not quite steady. "Thank you for telling me." "There is more," Cole said, and now his voice was definitely uncertain, almost nervous in a way she had never heard from him before. "Claire, these past 3 months have been the happiest of my life. Coming home every day to find you here, sharing meals with you, talking with you in the evenings, it has made this house feel like a home in a way it never did when I lived here alone. I find myself thinking about you when I'm out on the range, looking forward to dinner, not because I'm hungry, but because it means I get to see you. I wake up earlier than I need to just so I can have more time with you at breakfast." Clara's hands stilled in the dishwater. She was afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid that any reaction might stop him from saying whatever he was trying to say. "I know this is complicated," Cole continued, and she could hear him moving closer, could feel the warmth of him at her back. "I know that there is a power imbalance in our situation, that you might feel obligated or pressured, and that is the last thing I want. But I also cannot keep going without being honest with you about how I feel." "How do you feel?" Clara whispered, finally turning to face him. Cole looked at her with those clear blue eyes, and the vulnerability in them took her breath away. I am falling in love with you, Claire. Maybe I have been falling since I first saw you on that platform, so brave and fierce despite everything being taken from you. Maybe it happened slowly over these months as I got to know you, to see your kindness and your strength and your spirit. But either way, I am in love with you, and I needed you to know. Clara felt tears spring to her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy, of relief, of overwhelming emotion. I was so afraid, she admitted, her voice breaking. I was so afraid that what I was feeling was one-sided, that I was foolish for caring about you when I had no right to expect anything beyond what you had already given me. You care about me? Cole asked, and the hope in his voice was almost painful to hear. I love you, Clara said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see me as a person, not as property or a burden. I love how hard you work, how much you care about this land and the animals and the people who depend on you. I love the way you make me laugh and the way you listen when I talk and the way you respect my thoughts and opinions. I love you, Cole Brennan, and I have been trying so hard not to because I did not think I had the right. The smile that spread across Cole's face was like sunrise, bright and warm and full of promise. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and cupped her face in his calloused hands with a gentleness that made her heart ache. You have every right, he said softly. You have the right to feel whatever you feel, to want whatever you want. You are not my servant or my property. You are the woman I love. And if you will have me, I want to spend my life proving to you that you made the right choice in loving me back. Kiss me? Clara breathed, and Cole did. His lips were warm and gentle against hers, the kiss starting sweet and tentative but deepening as she responded, as her hands came up to grip his shoulders and his arms wrapped around her waist. It was Clara's first real kiss, and it was everything she had ever imagined and more. There was passion, but also tenderness, desire tempered with respect, the perfect expression of everything they felt for each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. Not because of the debt or the indenture or any sense of obligation, but because we love each other and we want to build a life together. Let me give you back not just your freedom, but your name. As my wife, as my partner, as my equal in all things. Yes, Clara said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you, 1,000 times yes. They spent the rest of that evening on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, making plans and dreaming dreams and stealing kisses like the love-struck fools they were. Cole insisted that they would marry as soon as possible, that he would tear up the indenture papers and Claire would be free immediately, not as a condition of marriage, but as a gift freely given. Claire insisted that she wanted to continue helping with the ranch because she loved the work and the life, and that being his wife would not mean giving up her own sense of purpose and contribution. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, in early October, when the Texas landscape was at its most beautiful, the oppressive heat broken by cooler days and crisp nights. They married in the small church in Redemption, the same town where Clara had been sold just 4 months earlier. Some might have thought it strange to return there, but Clara insisted. She wanted to walk back into that town not as property, but as a bride, not as someone to be pitied, but as someone loved and cherished. Miguel and Carlos stood as witnesses, along with a few friends Cole had made in the area. Clara wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Cole had ordered specially from San Antonio, simple but elegant, with lace at the collar and cuffs. She carried wildflowers picked fresh that morning, and Cole wore a new suit that made him look almost unbearably handsome. The ceremony was short and sweet, the Reverend's words about love and commitment and partnership resonating deeply with both bride and groom. When Cole slipped the gold band onto Clara's finger and pledged his life and love to her, she saw tears in his eyes that matched her own. And when the Reverend pronounced them man and wife and Cole kissed her, the handful of people in attendance applauded warmly. After the ceremony, as they walked out of the church into the sunshine, Clara saw some of the same people who had watched her auction, who had stood by while she was sold. Their expressions now ranged from surprise to confusion to what might have been shame. Clara held her head high, her hand firmly clasped in Cole's, and she felt a fierce satisfaction. She had survived the worst moment of her life and come through it to find love and happiness. She was no longer Clara Morrison, the daughter of a drunk who died penniless and left her to pay his debts. She was Claire Brennan, wife of a good man partner in a thriving ranch, and she had earned every bit of her happy ending. The reception was held at the ranch, a celebration that lasted well into the night. Miguel and Carlos had strung lanterns around the porch and the yard, creating a magical atmosphere as the sun set and the stars came out. There was music from a fiddle player Cole had hired, dancing on the porch, food that Clara had spent days preparing with the help of a few women from neighboring ranches who had come to accept her into their community. As Clara danced with her husband under the stars, his arms strong around her, his eyes full of love and promise, she thought about how much had changed in just a few short months. She had gone from being sold to being cherished, from being property to being a partner, from being lost to being found, and all because one man had seen her not as something to be owned, but as someone to be valued. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, his voice low and intimate in her ear as they swayed to the music. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Clara said honestly, "how easily this could have gone so differently. If Pritchard had bought me, if you had not been there that day." "But I was there," Cole interrupted gently, "and you are here, and this is our life now." No more dwelling on what could have been. We focus on what is and what will be. "And what will be?" Clara asked, smiling up at him. "Everything," Cole said simply. "A ranch that grows and prospers, a home filled with love and laughter, children, if we are blessed with them, a partnership built on respect and trust and passion, a long life together, facing whatever comes as equals." "That sounds perfect," Clara whispered, and kissed him again because she could, because he was hers and she was his, because they had found each other against all odds and she would never take that for granted. The months that followed were a time of deep happiness and adjustment as Clara settled into her new role as Cole's wife rather than his employee. The shift was sometimes subtle, sometimes profound. She no longer felt she had to prove her worth through constant labor. Instead, she and Cole worked together as a team, making decisions about the ranch jointly, planning for the future together, building something that belonged to both of them equally. Winter came. Milder than in northern states, but still bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain that turned the dry land green and lush. Clara discovered she had a gift for the business side of ranching, for keeping books and managing accounts, and Cole happily turned those responsibilities over to her while he focused on the physical work of managing cattle and horses. Spring brought new calves and the back-breaking work of branding and roundup. Clara worked alongside Cole and the Rodriguez brothers, learning to use a rope, to doctor sick calves, to do all the hard work that ranching demanded. She was exhausted at the end of each day, but it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from honest labor and visible accomplishment. It was in late spring that Clara discovered she was pregnant. The realization brought a complex mix of emotions, joy and fear and excitement all tangled together. She told Cole one evening after dinner, watched his face transform from surprise to absolute delight, and felt her own happiness swell to match his. "A baby," Cole said wonderingly, his hand coming to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, though she could already see the answer in his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Cole said, and then he was kissing her, gentle and reverent, treating her like she was made of glass even though she laughed and told him she was not fragile. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Clara continued to work, though Cole became almost comically protective, constantly trying to prevent her from lifting anything or working too hard. They argued about it good-naturedly, Clara insisting she was perfectly capable and Cole unable to help his worry. They compromised, as they had learned to do with all things, Clara agreeing to be more careful and Cole agreeing to stop hovering quite so much. As autumn arrived again, marking a full year since their wedding, Clara grew large and uncomfortable, but also radiant with happiness. She and Cole spent long evenings talking about names, about what kind of parents they wanted to be, about the future they were creating for their child. The baby came in early October, right around their first anniversary, as if determined to mark the occasion. The labor was long and difficult, attended by a midwife from a neighboring ranch in Cole, who refused to leave Clara's side despite the midwife's protests that it was not proper for husbands to be present. Clara was grateful for his presence, for his hand gripping hers, for his encouragement when she thought she could not endure another moment. When their son finally entered the world, red-faced and squalling, Clara wept with relief and joy and exhaustion. Cole cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and his child with an expression of such profound love that Clara felt her heart might burst from the fullness of it. They named him Daniel, after Clara's father, because despite his failures and weaknesses, he had been her parent and she had loved him. It was a way of honoring the past while focusing on the future, of acknowledging where she had come from while celebrating where she was now. Daniel was a healthy, happy baby who looked like his father with the same blue eyes and strong features. Cole was a devoted father, constantly holding his son, talking to him, singing to him in a rough voice that made Clara smile. She had known Cole would be a good father, but seeing him with their child gave her a whole new understanding of the depths of his capacity for love. The years that followed were full in the best possible way. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing from 200 head of cattle to over 500. They added more land, built a larger barn, hired 2 more hands to help Miguel and Carlos. They became known throughout the region for their quality stock and fair dealing. Clara became pregnant again when Daniel was 2, and this time they had a daughter they named Sarah, after Cole's mother. Sarah was all her mother, with dark hair and a fierce spirit that had both parents laughing and occasionally tearing their hair out as she grew into a wild, adventurous little girl who feared nothing. Clara threw herself into the community she had once been rejected by, starting a school in their home for Daniel and Sarah and the children of neighboring ranches. She taught reading and arithmetic and history using the books Cole bought for her from San Antonio and Houston, and found the fulfillment she had always dreamed of in seeing young minds develop and grow. Cole expanded the ranch's operations to include horses, breeding and training working animals that became sought after throughout Texas and beyond. He proved to have a gift for it, a patience and understanding of the animals that made him one of the most respected horse trainers in the region. Miguel and Carlos eventually saved enough to buy their own land, a smaller spread about 10 miles away, but they remained close friends with the Brennans, their families getting together regularly for meals and celebrations. Clara taught the Rodriguez children alongside her own, and their wives became her close friends. The Brennans' 3rd child came when Clara was 30. Another boy they named Thomas. He was a quiet, thoughtful child, more interested in books than ranching, and Clara and Cole nurtured his scholarly inclinations as carefully as they nurtured their other children's more physical pursuits. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that tested their resources, cattle diseases that decimated herds, the constant challenges of weather and market prices, and the 1,000 small disasters that made up ranching life. But Clara and Cole faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each challenge overcome, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, Cole took Clara back to Redemption for the first time since their wedding. The town had changed, grown larger and more prosperous, and the bank that had sold Clara was now under new management, the old banker having retired. They walked through the square where the auction had taken place, and Clara felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked as they stood where the platform had been, now just open space in front of the courthouse. "The way we started, the circumstances that brought us together?" Clara looked at her husband. This man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved, who had given her back not just her freedom, but her dignity and her joy. Not for a single moment, she said firmly. Yes, it started in darkness and pain and fear. Yes, I wish the circumstances had been different. But I would not change the outcome, would not trade what we have built together, would not give up our life and our love and our family for anything. Good, Cole said, pulling her close and kissing her there in the middle of town, not caring who saw. Because neither would I. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Claire Brennan. You and our life together. They returned to the ranch as the sun set, painting the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold. Their children were waiting. Daniel, now 12, and responsible enough to have watched his younger sibling, Sarah, 10, and already talking about becoming a rancher like her father, Thomas, 7, and eager to show his mother the new book he had been reading. Clara stood on the porch of the house that had become her home, watching Cole swing Thomas up onto his shoulders while Sarah chattered excitedly about the new foal in the barn, and Daniel smiled with the quiet contentment of a child who knew he was loved and secure. She thought about the girl she had been, standing on an auction platform believing her life was over. That girl could never have imagined this, the prosperity and the love and the family and the respect. She could never have imagined finding a partner who saw her as an equal, who valued her mind as much as her labor, who loved her with a constancy that never wavered. She could never have imagined becoming someone who was valued not for what she could provide, but simply for who she was. But here she stood, living proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest endings, that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that freedom was not just about the absence of chains, but about the presence of choice and respect and partnership. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky and her family gathered around her on the porch, Clara felt a profound sense of peace. She had been sold because her father owed the bank, bought by a cowboy who paid the debt and gave her back her name. But more than that, he had given her back herself, her dignity, her future, her capacity to love and be loved, and in return she had given him the same. They had saved each other in all the ways that mattered, and built a life that honored that salvation every single day. It was more than Clara had ever dared to dream, sitting in that auction crowd feeling hopeless and afraid. It was everything she had never known to wish for, and she was grateful for every single moment of it. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge, but always the constants remained: Cole's steady presence, the children's laughter, the ranch's demands, and the deep, abiding love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. Clara taught her children about resilience and compassion, about seeing people's worth beyond their circumstances, about standing up for what was right even when it was hard. When Clara was 35 and their youngest was 8, she and Cole took in a young woman named Emily, whose situation eerily mirrored Clara's own from years before. Emily's mother had died, her father had accumulated debts, and she was facing a potential forced marriage to satisfy those obligations. Cole paid the debts without hesitation, and Clara welcomed Emily into their home, not as a servant, but as family, helping her learn to stand on her own feet and believe in her own worth again. Emily stayed with them for 2 years before falling in love with a kind young rancher from the neighboring county. Clara stood as witness at Emily's wedding, feeling the circle complete in a way that brought both tears and joy. This was what Cole had meant all those years ago, that if he ever had the means, he would help another woman in the same situation. Now they both had the means, and they both had the will, and it became a quiet mission for them both to help when they could, where they could, however they could. As the children grew and began to make their own ways in the world, Daniel taking over more and more of the ranch operations, Sarah marrying a neighboring rancher's son and starting her own spread, Thomas heading off to university to study law, Clara and Cole found themselves with more time together, just the two of them, as they had been in those early days. They took long rides across their land, just as they had when Clara was first learning to ride Dancer. They sat on the porch in the evenings talking about everything and nothing, just as they had when they were falling in love. They held each other close at night, grateful for the life they had built, for the years they had shared, for the love that had only grown stronger with time. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a party that brought together friends and neighbors from all over the region. There were speeches and toasts, stories told about the Brennans' generosity and kindness, their hard work and integrity. But the moment Clara treasured most was late in the evening, when she and Cole slipped away from the crowd to stand under the stars, holding hands and looking out over the land they had built together. 20 years, Cole said softly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like forever. Both, Clara agreed. It feels like both. Do you remember what I said to you that first night when I told you what I expected from you? Cole asked. You said you expected honesty and a fair day's labor, Clara recalled. You said that was all. I was wrong, Cole said, turning to face her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. I got so much more than that. I got a partner and a lover and a best friend. I got the mother of my children and the co-builder of my dreams. I got someone who made every day better just by being in it. I got so much more than I ever deserved. We both did, Clara said, reaching up to touch his face, this face she knew as well as her own. These features she had memorized through years of love and laughter and life shared. We saved each other, Cole. That is what I believe. Whatever brought us together, fate or chance or just being in the right place at the right time, we saved each other and built something beautiful from the wreckage of our pasts. To another 20 years, Cole said, kissing her softly, and another 20 after that, and as many more as we are given. To us, Clara agreed. To our family, our home, our life together, to love that began in darkness but became the brightest light I have ever known. They stood there together under the Texas stars, two people who had found each other when they both needed saving, who had built a life of meaning and purpose and deep, abiding love. The ranch stretched around them, the home they had created glowing with light and life, their children and grandchildren gathering inside, their friends celebrating with them. Clara thought of the girl on the auction block, the one who had faced her fate with courage even as fear threatened to overwhelm her. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that everything would be all right, that the man stepping forward with his quiet bid and his clear blue eyes was not just rescuing her, but loving her, not just paying her debt, but giving her a future beyond anything she could imagine. But perhaps that girl had known, somewhere deep down. Perhaps that was why Clara had felt that first flutter of hope when Cole had looked at her with respect instead of ownership, why she had trusted him enough to climb onto his horse, why she had opened her heart to the possibility of love even when logic said she should guard it carefully. They had taken a chance on each other, and it had paid off in ways neither of them could have predicted. They had built a legacy of love and hard work, of kindness and integrity that would outlast them both. Their children would carry on the ranch, would teach their own children the values Clara and Cole had instilled, would tell the story of how their parents met and fell in love despite impossible circumstances. And that story, Clara thought, was the real gift Cole had given her. Not just her freedom, not just her name restored, but a story of hope and redemption, of love triumphing over circumstances, of two people who refused to let the worst moments of their lives define them. As they walked back to the party hand in hand, Clara felt a completeness that went beyond contentment into something like grace. She had been sold because her father owed the bank, yes. A cowboy had paid the debt and given her back her name, true. But the real story, the one that mattered, was what came after. The love they built, the life they shared, the family they created, the community they served, the hope they gave to others facing their own dark moments. That was the story worth telling. And Clara and Cole Brennan lived it fully, gratefully, joyfully, for all the years they were blessed to share together, leaving behind a legacy of love that would endure for generations to come, proof that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings when two hearts were brave enough to choose each other, again and again, every single day.